Thank you for joining me. My name is Shawn Lindemood, and today I'm going to show you how I made this awesome artwork into this badge. I want to throw a special thank you out to Raven Symoné Cruz, who did this awesome artwork, and you can follow her on Twitter at Revenge Lover, or check out her artwork at revengelover.com. Going into the tutorial part of this, it's going to be covering VCarve, which is a program that I use, 2.5D software, to use on my CNC, and then I'll go into cutting it and how I finished it. Stay tuned. I'm going to go through a rough overview of how I turned the logo into vectors and then into a carving. Like most projects in a lot of different software, you're going to create a new file. In this 3D software, well 2.5D software, we're going to be making cuts on material, so the material size is a factor, and in this case I'm going to go with 2 inch because I was going to make the logo 2 inches tall, and I'm going to use a 2 inch material. This is a 1/4 inch thick. So in theory, the material, viewable in 3D, so we're going to make cuts. However, we're going to start with importing our bitmap, and bitmap is just what it refers to images, and in this case we're going to do the logo for our local Arizona Fallout group. And it auto sizes to the size of the material, and I want that quite a bit bigger. So I'm going to drag down some, I'll place it. We'll drag down some measurement rulers. That's 2 inches. And then I'm holding down Shift to resize it evenly, and we're going to make it, yeah, 2 inches. 2 inches is great. So now that that's selected, we have this cool little button called Trace Bitmap. It's going to be tracing the contrast, so it's only got a kind of a yes or no deal about it. It's going to be putting the line right on the contrast line. So I'm going to move this until there's a nice solid picture for me to like very much. We'll go with that. All right, so all I did was fit vectors there, and bingo. Right there I got the vectors drawn, and that's pretty much it. I can actually export those if I wanted to, take it to another program. Here I'm going to hide the picture. You can see just shy of 2 inches top and bottom. And what I'm going to do here is what I did before was everything including the text. However, the text is going to be a separate element on this. And we're going to move some of this. I don't want to just delete this. I don't feel that's necessary, but you know what? We'll grab everything and make sure that's centered on the material. We're going to take the star and this outline here, and we're going to move it to another layer. Just call that layer not used. So we're not really deleting it. We're not deleting it at all, actually, but we don't want to see it. So now that we have a new layer, I can go bloop, make it invisible. It's there, but we're not going to see it. So some of these other details, such as these specs here, I'm going to shift select, and I'm going to also move those to the not used layer. I got to be careful though because it's still selected. So I want to make sure that the active layer is the layer I'm working on, which is the one with the vectors. So now I'm going to be grouping. You see how many pieces are actually there. In this case, I can drag right and select everything that's completely inside the square. The rectangle selection is going to be selected. Anything that's partially out will not be selected. And then I'm going to do, I can just completely group that together. So now I have one object that I can deal with, and it's a rather striking Deathclaw face. And now I can address cutting the vectors out. So in this case, I'm going to grab my tool path on the outside. We're going to grab It's already selected. We're going to grab a V-bit. A V-bit's a 60-degree included angle, which is the entire angle of this is 60 degrees. Now these are all specific to my machine. Some of these don't matter, like spindle speed. It doesn't control spindle speed, so it doesn't matter. But we're going to select that. We'll call this the Deathclaw, because that's the part that it is including. We're not adding any tabs in this because we're not cutting something out. We're just going to go through. This is more like a detail cut. So if I did it right, that should cover what I wanted to cover. If I did it wrong, it's the opposite, because the change is the difference between an inside and outside cut. Voila. And actually that is exactly what I was hoping for. So what I can do is actually do that with all of this. I'm going to actually redo it. And now I'm dragging left, and everything that's partially selected is going to get selected. And we can preview that toolpath. So it's the same thing with the head, but then it includes the outline. Now this is a detail cut, so now we can go in and do what's called a pocket cut. And in the pocket cut, we're going to be clearing away most of this, or rather all of the material that isn't wanted. In this case, it's going to be everything in here that we're not going to want to see. Anything that's considered waste material that we don't want. See, we have the same stuff calculated, and I know I selected it wrong, because that is clearly not what I want cleared. So we actually selected, so the correct selections, what it considers inside and out, is clearly not what I was wanting inside and out. Now we are seeing that. That is where it would cut out. But we actually don't want that. We want the opposite. We want this inside here. And my mistake was not selecting this outer shell here. So what it considered inside was everything inside this loop. What I want is everything inside this loop. That's not part of these vectors. So if I was to select, just select everything. We're going to deal with that in a moment. That's the Arizona logo down at the bottom with a nice little lightning bolt going through it. All right, so we're selecting everything here. We'll select that and see if that's going to be calculated correctly. We're using a V-bit for the tool, the specific clearance cuts, and then the 1/8 inch bit for the larger stuff. We're going to 0.04 inches. Because it doesn't need that. That's why. Okay, so let's do that. We'll go to preview toolpaths, reset the preview, and we're looking at all of the cuts. And actually the Deathclaw head, we will go back and select the circle. Let's calculate that and preview all the toolpaths again. And that gets whipped out like that. But really what we need is some sort of clearance on the outer edge here to make that flat. Because when I go to cut this out, and I'll show you what we'll do there, we'll go to a profile to cut through. We're using quarter inch, we're using 1/8 inch drill bit or end mill to cut through 1/4 inch worth of material. On the outside, calculate that. And so this would be the cutout. So what you're going to see here is actually a lip that goes up. So this is not the desirable setting that I want. Let that finish. We can delete waste material to kind of show what's going on here. And what I want actually is going to be this needs to be flat. Or we can go the opposite direction and make that all and this edge raised. However, what I want to do is offset the vectors inward by what's half of that width. What do we measure that? Actually, probably along the lines of, oh, actually, they have a measurement tool. From there to there. 0.05. So we're going to use 0.05. 0.05. Inward. Oh, it's because I didn't select any. Offset that. That is not what I want. All right, Control Z that bad boy. Let's see if 4 inches or 0.04. So we're going around this. That actually should work plenty good and actually look fine at the scale we're doing. So what we're going to end up doing with that is actually doing something along the lines of this cutout. So what I'm going to do is actually copy this cutout. Copy this cutout. Actually only go 0.04 inches. Select that. And we're going to make sure we're on the outside of that. Okay, we'll just call that an edge. Calculate that. And I believe that is going to be cutting out the bottom of that. That is not what I wanted. But for the sake of instructional purposes, we're going to go ahead and say that is going to be sufficient for the moment. Because of that. So what I can do. Oh, wow. Copy that. Go back to. And add these together like that, and it goes around it beautifully. And if we use vectors here, well, you know, what we can do is just delete a couple of these bad boys. Call that sufficient. Okay, I'm not hitting D on this, I'm actually converting them to something else. Okay, let's get these a little more. So on the scale we're looking at some really small measurements here. You can see we're going 10,000ths of an inch, like right here. As far as this is concerned, that's going to be very, very good. So we don't want to spend too much time on that. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to recalculate that. And it shows the path there. I'm going to go ahead and reset the preview and preview all tool paths. And it's going to come close to the, well, that's the cutout. And then, okay, so it's doing it in order. I did this edge after the cutout, which is not something you normally do. Normally you do everything, then the cutout. That is how I'm looking at it. We now want to cut out the Arizona. what we're going to do is we're going to actually do the Arizona like this with a another pocket. We'll call that Arizona. And it's not using the flat tool, so it says, hey, wait a minute. And so as a clearance tool, it just did the clearance parts. So if we preview that tool path, what we're looking at is like, what the heck, what's going on here? So what we really need to do is also do a profile, tool profile, regular cutout. So we're going to go to another V-bit. I'm selecting tools based on their size, not the speeds. So I have aluminum and wood profiles, depending on whether or not I'm using big cuts for wood or little cuts for aluminum. And that's not going to matter for purposes of demonstration. So that generated the details, and I think that I clearly selected something a little too much. So let's go ahead and preview that. Preview visible toolpath. So that chamfered the line right there. That is not what I was looking for. So I'm going to go back and look at what I did. I should have done the inside instead of the outside. So recalculate that. And you can see if I did it now, if I went ahead and previewed that toolpath, it's going to cut out the opposite, and now I'm going to have these little raised line where this groove goes, which is actually kind of a cool effect, but not what I'm going for. And in practice, when I'm doing something this small, with my setup, it's going to ends up being a little too a little too sharp, and not something that actually works out well. So we're going to go ahead and reset the preview and preview all toolpaths again. Oh, we could totally edit this part out. You see we got a really nice little Arizona going on. Delete the waste material. And real nice. Now, the one thing that's missing here is the New Arizona Republic across the top in text. So what I could do is actually go to text and just, type something. Call that good. And just place it. Or I could try to be more true to the bitmap and actually attempt to be a little more true to form. So we're centering that, and actually we're also going to be doing yeah, so that's not the font we expected it to be. Boop. So for purposes of instruction, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just do a kind of a good representation here. So we've got a font that's fairly close to what was done in the drawing, but not exact, and we've got it so it overlaps about like the original. All we got to do with this overlapping part, since it's overlapping in the dark part, is just not cut it as deep. So I'm going to go to the bitmap layer and get rid of the bitmap again. I'm going to select these two, and since I'm going to keep them the same, I'm going to go ahead and group them. And then we're going to end up doing an inside cut. It's going to inside cut with a V-bit. And we're going to go to 2000s. or 20 thousandths, sorry, 20 thousandths. Preview that toolpath, and actually also should have done this, which is pocketing. We never use the larger tool. Sounds great. Preview that toolpath. Voila. So at this point, I can actually export it for cutting, but there's a couple things I need to clean up here. I went through and I made sure all of these were the aluminum V-bit, and you see these two tools right here. These are actually the regular end mills. This cutout's got to be last. And what I need to do is actually go in and we're going to re-highlight it. So it's going to cut out there. I'm actually going to add some tabs. We're going to reselect the cutout, then we're going to add tabs. So we're going to click on this to add the tabs, and we need to edit the tabs. So here we can actually do it by hand. So what I like to do is I keep them away from curves if I can. So I'm going to put one there, and then I'll do the opposite side. And so as it's cutting it out, these are going to hold it in place from vibrating around because I'm going to cut through at this point. So we're going to go with that. So we're going to calculate it. So it's going to recalculate the cutout, but what's going to be with these little notches here, which are going to leave material. And if we reset the preview and just show that path, you can see this is how my machine, this is how I like my machine cutting it out. So I can take this off and take it to the bandsaw and cut these out neatly, or with some diagonal cutters. And you can see the material left there to hold it in place, to not vibrate. I am not going to go that deep either, because my material is not that deep. This was be for a wood cutout, so we're going to change that to, and it's going to tell me you need to cut, you need to redo everything. Yes, I need to redo everything. We're going to change everything to appropriate thickness for 1/8 material. We'll preview everything. Now, this is the order it's going to be cutting out in. All these are going to be the V-bit first, and then it's going to go around the outside with the 1/8" end mill, and then cut it out with that same 1/8" end mill. And that was the edging, and now it's the cutout. And that's ready to go. So I'm going to go in and add words down here. Phoenix Outpost was decided to be Fallout group. So there's a couple ways I can do that will come up with the same effect as this curve right here. So what I have, if you remember, I have this section right here, and I'm going to actually pull those up, make those visible, and we'll go into node editing. So what I'm going to do here is actually cut these at this point and free up and make a line. What that allows me to do is this is going to be my reference line, because once I get out of that mode, the line remains, and I can use that as a reference line for text. So I'm going to do this side on camera, and then do the other side and line everything up just right. I'll do that in all caps. Fallout. Apply that. Figure out where that went. I don't know why. I don't know why I did the 3-inch height. So you can change it here also. We're gonna, I don't know, 0.1. See how big that is. Okay, 0.1 is going to be way too big. So we'll go with half of that. Okay. So at this point, we'll select. We'll just apply that. We'll select. We can change some minor things later. Oh, we're still in text. So I have the text selected. I have the line I'm going to align it to selected, and we're going to text against a line, which is a wrap. You can mess around with the different versions of this, flip it and everything. So this is above the curve. You can do below the curve, and then we're going to offset the distance. Let's see, that's about the distance of the letters. apply that up. And that actually looks like it came out really good. So that's going to end up, we're going to end up grouping the letters specifically with the letters here so they can be the same depth. And let me finish that up and I will show you how I export it to my card. So at this point we're going to select all of the same tool to be exported, so they can be exported as a toolpath using the same tool. So it's going to list here all of these, and then this one right here, this is going to be a big no-no because my wood calculations are a lot faster, so I got to go back in there and change that from a wood to an aluminum bit because of the toolpath speeds are going to be slowed down quite a bit. It doesn't need that larger tool. We're going to recalculate that, and then we're going to go back to save the toolpaths. So we're going to save all of these, all the ones that are visible, as a toolpath. So that goes as to something you can think of. I like naming it whatever it is, and then VBit. So I remember it's a VBit, and that's going to be that set of paths. So I can run that as one, and then I'm going to end up running the 1/8" end mill separately as a separate toolpath. Call that cutout. We'll save that. Now that those are saved like that, I can take that to my machine and cut them. And it will hopefully look just about like what we have in the picture. This is a TAG micro mill. This is made locally, and it's only designed for a work area of 6 by 4 inches by 4 inches. So it's really ideal for the stuff I do. This is the 60-degree V-bit right here. This is what's going to be making the inside edges sharp and the grooves that we're going to be cutting everything out with. This is my Mach 3 CNC software that I've been using for a few years now, and I've got the code already loaded right there with the cut paths, and we are ready to cut. So I just finished the cutout, and as you can see, everything looks really good. That is not the right place to mount this. Now here I'm going to get close to the badge as I can without cutting into it, so that those tabs can still be there, but we can cut them off and with file them off. I'm using a file called a Mill Bastard on these, and what it's going to do is going to be good finish edge without having to worry too much about digging into it with some real coarse teeth. There's a nice clean edge there now. And I'm going to wash this down with some acetone, and then we'll apply some black. So I've moved to a chemical resistant board so that I can apply some acetone and clean it up using a brush. I couldn't find one, so I just grabbed my toothbrush, and it's all right. Acetone will leave a little bit of flavor. I am kidding, this is not a toothbrush. And when, oh, it's actually looking really nice. So, get all that schmutz out of there.
So I'm going to be using Sculpt Nouveau's black wax on this. This particular one says for iron and steel. However, I've had really good use of this on my keychains that are aluminum and have lasted for years with this particular wax right here. And it's going to go on quite literally like a wax. Make sure we get it in all the cracks and crevices. It's going to give kind of a shadowy effect, not like the primered one, where a primered one is going to have, when I say primer, I use black primer on some of these, and they come out really good, but in this case I'm going to use this black wax. And it's going to have the black in all the crevices. And some of the crevices are going to actually show up as it's going to wash it out just a little bit, but it's still going to turn out really good.
So it's been a little while, and the wax is hopefully mostly dry or completely dry. So all I'm going to do is lay this upside down, drag it straight across, and we'll call that finished. If I would have used paint, it would have been a lot more persistent around the edges here, but it's not really a big deal to me because this is more of a wear item. The brushed look will also wear out over time since I didn't anodize this or anything like that. So we're looking at job complete. One of the things that's great about this is I can make things like this, which is a stamp for leather. And I actually have this cut out like this to be coaster size. So I've actually made leather coasters with this logo on it. And that ends up looking like this, fitting in there, and I create a stamp. Thank you for watching. If you really enjoyed this, give me a like, give me a subscribe. Tell me what you thought, tell me what I could do better. And again, thank you to Raven Symoné Cruz and the New Arizona Republic Fallout group. Find them on Facebook, follow them on Twitter. Remember, I've got some more videos coming up. I've got a molding and casting series coming up, as well as digging into BB-8, Fallout, and my Predator stuff. Thanks again. See you guys later.